You're live. All right. I think we're live, guys. We'll see if it starts going here, right?
Mm-hmm. Are you're
I'm not
broadcasting?
seeing. Yeah, well, it says it is. I'm not seeing any. Oh, yeah, we're live. Definitely.
All right.
So,
Live
anyway,
on my end too.
live on your end too. Great. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are probably simulcasting between Jesse Spot's channel and my backup channel, and Matt will be uploading it to his channel later. We were sitting there fiddling with it for a while, trying to make this show run without screwing up the scheduled show for 5 o'clock tonight. So I was fiddling with all the settings for a while, and I think we finally got it. So we have a good show tonight. We have let's see, we have a good discussion about what's been going on with the Rogan situation and some background research on that on the intellectual dark web, and how all of our research combines. At 5 o'clock tonight, I will also be doing my show with YTDown for part 6 on Islam, and I highly recommend all you catch that as well. And I have great news. Yesterday, YouTube activated the super chats on my backup channel after fighting for that for a while. So
That's great.
Yeah, it is.
That's what people know.
Hit the super chat, folks. I haven't been able to get donations in here for months, so I don't want to be able to miss rent and all that. So I appreciate everybody's help. Jesse, you want to give a little rundown for your audience as well?
Yeah, well, and obviously for, I guess, people on your channel are familiar because we had that one conversation, but I feel pretty confident my audience is pretty well caught up. I'm not going to be paying attention to the chat right now because we're using multiple pieces of software and be juggling too much. But as I understand it, Matt's going to be heading up some of the technical information about the Esalen Institute, those types of things. I'll be talking about some of these characters, especially broadcasters, for how the neo-shamanism movement and the intellectual dark web is really the same agenda that you've been talking about.
It doesn't seem to wear out, apparently. It just shifts generations, huh?
I think it is worth warning that some of the characters we'll be talking about today are beloved internet characters. So take it with a grain of salt. If this is somebody that you still follow, check our research, check our work, make sure we're doing a good job when it comes to people like Sam Harris, Jordan Peterson, and then I'll be naming a few more as we continue.
And you are getting a little bit of lag there. Is the video running on your side?
Video looks good.
You want to pause it just in case so we're not getting any extra lag?
Pause what?
The video from playing on your side?
I can try to see. I'll just start shutting down programs.
Yeah.
That's about all I can.
Matt, while he's doing that, say hello to everybody.
Hi, guys. It's great to be here on with Jesse and Jan. It's the second time I get to talk to both you guys. Just happy to be here, and hopefully my audience will become aware of the intellectual dark web. Before we start, I do want to mention Jesse's playlist on the intellectual dark web. He's done quite a bit of work on it and long format shows on it, and it breaks it down very well. So check that playlist out and share it because there's a lot of good stuff on it.
And I wanted to mention that we had uploaded your video to my channel the other day as I push on the cord here and cut out my own headphones. It's what's it got now? I mean, it's been cranking up there in numbers pretty fast. I think we're close to, I don't know, getting close to 40,000 views on it. So it's taken off pretty well. And I think actually between your channel and my channel, we're pushing well over 40,000 now. So that'll put a good dent in things, and hopefully has helped wake people up regarding the underlying agenda on all of it, And so good job on that, Matt. And there's lots of positive feedback on your interview that we did on Saturday, which I don't normally don't do Saturday morning shows, but it was a good show. So I recommend people go on the channel and check that out. It's also on Matt's page. But anyway, so why don't we dive in? Who wants to start? Jesse?
Yeah, I think the fact that you guys have a really successful video exposing Joe Rogan, that just shows how relevant this information is. About a week and a half ago, Alex Jones went onto the Joe Rogan podcast, and at least 20 million people have been jumped in so far to a reality that's pretty jolting, I imagine, for most of them. So what we'll be doing is trying to catch people up as far as Jan's research with the Aldous Huxley family and where it comes to people like Gordon Wasson, and then hopefully selling a few of you on the fact that not only Joe Rogan is part of that agenda, but people like Jordan Peterson, other broadcasters such as Dave Rubin, the Weinstein brothers, and people who have been networked with Joe for quite some time.
Very true. And I just had something to say, and then I forgot what it was. Dang it. Go ahead, man.
Well, I opened up some tabs just as an overview. I think some of the names that we really haven't mentioned on my channel, because we have this stream of consciousness thing where we research and report back to each other and we share information. It's been a while since we've included Ben Shapiro in the list, and naturally he's included with Daily Wire. I just mentioned Dave Rubin with the Rubin Report. So these are like propaganda wings where these characters are talking to each other, promoting each other. And the podcast world is ripe with these agendas right now. One name that I've never included that I'd like to talk about a little bit today is author Chris Ryan. I showed that to you at some point, Jan, and I'm not sure if I've showed it to you, Matthew, but it's a guy who promotes hedonism, essentially, that humans are wired for open relationships. And that, of course, is a anti-family value if you look at it through the lens of this agenda. And that falls in with the On It network. That's the podcast network that Joe Rogan is tied to, with people like Duncan Trussell, Brian Redband, so on and so on and so on.
And the whole purpose of selling the idea that we're not meant for monogamous relationships is to get people to not settle down and have families, but to jump from one relationship to the next and to be hypersexualized. And so that when you get into a place in your life where you want to have a family, you're basically, oh, wow, thank you, Mr. Winters, for the super chat there. You're basically in a place where you're kind of screwed for settling down and having a family. I call it extended adolescence or arrested development. And so, and thank you, Sanchez, so that you can't, it's basically just to prevent you from getting there. And then we did the show on the birth control pill a couple weeks ago with Isabella Wilson, and showing the whole thing there, and to get women sexualized as much as men are these days and shouldn't also be as well, so that people don't have that lifelong pair bonding and then can't have that strong family connection.
That's one that it's honestly one that I've struggled with. I mean, I'm only a few years snapped out of that one. I think a lot of us, when we're younger, we may go off to college in another city, and we don't like to include ourselves, the fact that we could be fooled by this agenda. But so many people are chasing after their careers. They're chasing after the, women's lib movement, all of those things, although they have an angle that sounds so innocent and so freeing. When you really look at the dynamics of everything, the family has suffered. communities have suffered, and it can hardly be debated anymore.
Well, and to add on that, and then I'll pass it over to you, Matt. Aldous Huxley was behind this whole agenda. He created the term the pill. But when you look at feminism, it's sold as women's rights, the suffragette movement, all of this. But the real agenda was to get women out of the home and away from the family, into the factories, get them taxed. The taxation of women, and giving them the right to vote wasn't just about them voting. It was also about getting them in the factories, giving them regular jobs where they could be taxed, whereas before only the men paid the taxes because there was no taxation without representation. So, you get one gain here and you lose it there. So actually they were pulled into the system. It wasn't freedom and the right to vote. It was actually pulling them into the system, whereas, men were in the system prior to that, and then we brought the supplies home for the women who ran the household and took care of the family. And then in socialist systems, and of course Aldous Huxley was a Fabian socialist. This is all based on Huxley's Brave New World agenda, which I've exposed for years. But you get they're all Fabian socialists, and the goal of socialism is that you can't have a good socialist or communist country when you have a solid family and extended family, because they don't need. When you have a good extended family, you don't care about what the government is doing. But if you're a single mother, hypersexualized and all of that, you're going to need to rely on the state to get you by. So
The babysitter state.
the babysitter state, right. And then furthermore, what they've done from there is they've hypersexualized everyone and gotten them to not be even single mothers now, but not to have families at all. And then so when you grow older, not only do you not have the nuclear family or the extended family, but now you're on your own. So the only thing you can rely on when you get older is the state to take care of you. So this is the agenda, is to get everybody pulled on to the government, whereas before the family did all of that. And this is the agenda of the Fabian socialists who have created this whole thing. And of course, as I've exposed for years, Aldous Huxley was one of the key architects behind MK Ultra.
Well, I don't have much to add to that other than the fact that I see exactly what you guys are talking about. And as you mentioned, it is the Brave New World blueprint. Also, the Fourth World, the George Hunt interview you did, he explains this. So as far as that really is the intellectual dark web agenda, that centrist agenda going on, where you have the left and the right playing into all these movements that, and it's also everybody my age. I agree. We're all getting pulled into these type of movements and stuff. So, it is the Brave New World agenda.
I went ahead and I cut the stream on my side because I was getting so many dropped frames, but I trust that people will figure out where to find us.
We hope. There's only 1,500 subscribers to my backup channel still, and
they'll find us.
And thanks to Matt's new video, we got about 1,500 new subscribers this week to the main channel. And I meant to do a video all day long today, like a minute long, just saying, hey, here's the backup channel over here where we do the live feeds from, but I still haven't had a chance to do that. So maybe just before the 5 o'clock show, I'll manage to get that out.
Well, it's definitely going to be the issue. That's the big reason why I would encourage you to go on Alex Jones, is just constantly having to try to get people to focus. I came from the gym before the show, and even at the gym, you see people basically programming themselves. Now, it's a healthy activity, but it's all about repetition. People in their heads are just sitting there counting to 6 or counting to 8 or counting to 14. What's on TV? Oh, Fox News or CNN. The dialectic is everywhere you look. So hopefully this broadcast can help people pierce through it. Just that extra little amount so that they commit to pulling down the wool off of other people's eyes. That's what I always look for, is just to try to poke through that armor and get somebody to look twice.
And
Well,
just very quickly, a woman in the chat, Two Little Fish, says, I'm a woman, 3 children, 18, 13, 10 years old, no school, 100% how to keep your family. Hardworking man to take care of us all, still works out, but indeed harder than it used to be. So, this is what we're talking about exactly. And she gets it. She's managing the family. He's the provider. He's out at work. And she's running the home. This is how things were done for thousands of years to keep the family and everything together. And then you had your extended family where the aunts, uncles, and cousins also helped take care of things and the property and the animals and all of that, so that you had your own food growing right there on the property as well. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to agree with Jesse on his point that people do fill their life with distraction after distraction. And I used to do it too, and once you start to remove these distractions from your life, then you can really see what agenda they're pushing. So it's, again, removing distraction after distraction. And, I just wanted to agree with his point there.
Yeah. Well, in Matthew, there was something that I noticed recently, because you and I have basically been side by side with this IDW thing. I think the Weinstein brothers are a perfect example of how you have to look for inconsistencies, and you have to take people at face value up to a point, and then when you realize they're not who they say they are, YouTube has served to help expose, hey, this person is not who they say they are. They're just throwing a smoke bomb so that you will be distracted. And I think it was Eric Weinstein and his brother Brett both went on to the Joe Rogan podcast. And the little legend, their little myth-making enterprise about themselves, is that Brett was like radically expelled from the universities because the PC culture was rising up on them. And so they came out just like Jordan Peterson as the problem reaction solution to this politically correct culture. And sure enough, after a couple of months of people rattling their sabers, it was the Brett Kavanaugh hearing that really woke people up and alerted people to the fact that these were wolves in sheep's clothing, which of course is the logo of the Fabian Society. But Brett Kavanaugh, I think that the whole thing was over Twitter, of course. Jordan Peterson was playing dumb about how our democracy works. He was making some philosophical suggestion for how the two-party system should move forward. And to people like broadcaster Owen Benjamin, Vox Day, Milo, and others, it answered all their questions about the Weinstein brothers and Jordan Peterson, that they were perhaps serving the CFR or the bankers or some other shadowy enterprise. And that, I was very thankful for that. But why is it always Twitter interactions? Why is it always these superficial social media platforms that people are plugged into still? Like almost everything is like that. Everybody arguing about Jack Dorsey, they're arguing about a platform that's limited to, I think, 140 characters.
Right. Talk about sound bites.
It's a whole soundbite culture, and we don't seem to have a method for escaping it, except for this piece of rhetoric that we're receiving right now about cryptocurrency and the blockchain, which of course is another part of this that hopefully we'll get around to.
Well, yeah, just building on what you said there, they're offering the solution. They're the centrists that the left and the right is playing into right now, and they're funneling people into this predetermined matrix. If you want to elaborate on the whole cryptocurrency and their involvement in it, that would be great. Or
I think we'll get there eventually. I think it's important just maybe to focus on some of these personalities right now, my friend Existentialist, he has a website. It's actually one of the quote unquote official websites of the intellectual dark web. And how that happened was he was a fan of Sam Harris. And the more he paid attention to Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris, the more he started to suspect that it was an agenda. He was sitting on top of this website, and now he's conflicted about how he's actually generating traffic for the same individuals that he thinks are deceiving the world. And he now has a blog about Patreon, about Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin, uh, funneling, as you said, people away from Patreon to a new platform. And so he went and he did this research, and he found that there's certain corporate interest, of course, tied to all of these things, that this is essentially a corporate shell game that the Weinstein brothers, Dave Rubin, Jordan Peterson, and many other individuals are playing into. It's just a corporate shell game. I mean, I think that's the easiest way to break down where we currently are, is that on social media, people are jacked into their false idol, their favorite personality, whether it's Daily Wire, the Rubin Report, or the Joe Rogan podcast. And people like Peter Thiel, other individuals, the On It Network, it's the Marcus family. They're just moving around, shuffling people around between social networks and convincing them that they have the right hero picked out. You know, we've got to keep the dialectic going, because the liberals are so bad, or because PC culture is so bad. And then the end result of that is, you know, sign up for minds.com or sign up for Bitcoin or Ethereum. It's all corporate.
And, you know, and then you look at Joe just had the CEO creator of minds.com on, and that puts you like, oh, you know, okay, what's the agenda there? We got another Twitter on our hands, you know. And then didn't one of you, I think last night, sent me an article about how they staged the whole thing against Patreon as well, you know.
Well, that's what we're looking into. You don't want to say anything definitively, but yes, allegedly, Sargon of Akkad single-handedly crippled Patreon. Is that true, or is this a problem reaction dialectic leading to a bigger market share on a whole new platform that they're forming?
I don't know what I did with that link. If you want
Yeah,
to,
I'll find that.
Just tell me. Do you remember the name of it? I'll start typing it in.
Well, it's intellectual dark website, but it's got
That's
it right
where the
here.
article was.
Yeah,
Can you
intellectual.
email it to me, Matt? Or
Yeah,
That actually was the existentialist article he was referencing prior. That guy does great research. So another subject, or another person who's working on the subject. So I think he's worth mentioning.
and he would like to get out there with his own YouTube channel eventually, but right now he's just diligently working on that website. And like I said, he's become very conflicted, because he realizes that he's just helping to generate more traffic for people who are pulling off the neo shaman Aldous Huxley deception, or you could say one part of it.
so why doesn't he just switch teams? You know, he's got the you know, the website. And by the way, you know, we just launched. It's only going to Facebook right now, a Facebook group, but we just launched a page called bravenewworld.exposed. So, you know, people can go to that and get to that page too. And we're trying to put as much stuff up there about the Huxley family and the Brave New World situation as well. I'm on his page, but I'm not finding that article. So
Yeah, I'll send it to you. It's that's actually what he and I talked about, is maybe making you know, the cutting through the deception.
Oh,
Try to.
I think I just found it. Wait. Oh, I found it. Yay.
Hey, there we go.
Lovely. All right, here we go. I'm going to show this. So yeah, this is this article, intellectual dark web, intellectualdark.website/Patreon. And he's just going over how he thinks that Patreon was probably, or possibly, I should caveat that, set up to take the fall for all of this, and then and then they created their own financial website. Jordan Peterson and who was it? Peter Thiel, somebody.
Well, Dave Rubin as a talking head, but yes, behind the scenes, it's Peter Thiel, clearly.
Right. And then we have all of them sitting right here in this photo, and you've shown me this photograph before. Jordan Peterson, Eric Weinstein, Ben Shapiro. I'm not sure who that guy is. Joe Rogan and Sam Harris. Oh, that's what's his name? That's
You left out who? Eric Weinstein?
No, I mentioned him. What was the other guy I just left out?
Rubin.
Rubin. Thank you, David Rubin. Right.
Yeah.
So, that, and when you look at all of these agendas, all of the going on behind the scenes, it's like, these are the movers and the shakers, and Rogan with 4.7 or whatever million subscribers on his channel, that's a huge influence. And, and then my live feed gets shut down and whatnot, and I get harassed for trying to run a channel with 61,000 subscribers and putting my own interview out. And the hypocrisy of the whole thing is that Rogan can have Alex Jones on his show and not get banned and shut down. But if I put out my own interview and telling kids not to do drugs rather than doing drugs, my live feed is shut down.
Well, think about this, Jan. People have no sense of perspective with how the world is networked together so tightly now. And not necessarily the whole world, but the intellectual influencers, people who think that they're hip, people who think that they're plugged in. You might call them market mavens. These people are so interconnected now. Joe Rogan can easily launch a person's career. He can platform boost a single podcast and make sure that it catches on and becomes a viable commercial entity. So it is worth mentioning every time Sam Harris appears on the Joe Rogan podcast or Jordan Peterson, it's like hitting a tetherball to not only make sure that person stays relevant, but they're going to sell books. They're going to get new cult followers. And there's a whole network of these podcasts. And I've been trying to keep my eye on as many of them as I can to look for these agendas. And right now, definitely the Rubin Report and Joe Rogan are like the number two, 1 and 2 ones that push these agendas such as transhumanism openly.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, the Rogan launches careers all the time, even with the Comedy Store click. That agenda trickles down, either whether it's directly or indirectly. They push the same agendas that are being pushed through Rogan. So transhumanism on Brendan Schaub or whatever their show is, I see that push there.
Fighter and the Kid.
Yeah, so with these people, and when you get subconsciously programmed, is when you're trying to relax. So people want to relax and watch a comedy show, but their subconscious is being bombarded with all these agendas that are trickling down through Rogan, or they're getting paid to promote them. Either way, the agendas are making their way through that avenue.
I also want to mention that it's almost negligible whether these people are in the CIA or part of a linked network, because that podcast community is so reflective. People are just catching these ideas and repeating them back to each other. I was watching Theo Vaughn, who is a rising podcast star, and he was inspired by Tim Pool going on to Joe Rogan to talk about Twitter's Jack Dorsey. And even though he was skeptical of Jack Dorsey in telling people to look out for the censorship, I noticed that he was picking up some of Jack Dorsey's talking points, in that people are now in different or shared realities. So we're really moving into this sort of hyper connected, hyper focused society of intellectual movers and shakers repeating the same talking points ad nauseum. What do we do about it?
Except for us, right? You know, we're the only ones not going with the grain here. We're the only ones sitting there going, "Wait, stop, stop, stop. Look at this whole agenda. Wait, you know, the Huxley family, Julian Huxley coined the term transhumanism. It's all of this stuff goes back to the Huxleys, to the Fabian socialists, etc. And you know, how many shows can I do and how many years can I spend exposing it? And you know, it's like, you know, eventually it's got to spread out there.
Well, I think it's starting to. And I think it just comes down to people being unaware. Like you read Brave New World in school and you don't think anything of it, but it's legitimately a blueprint. And that this is the agenda they're ultimately pushing. And it's through these social change agents or social influencers, and ultimately coming down from corporate masters like Peter Thiel, as Jesse and Jan mentioned. You know, Peter Thiel is heavily invested in life extension, and he talks openly about it. Alex Jones will talk about how the bigger plan is going to provide you with life extension and unlimited cloning, etc. So they're offering, you know, these things that sound great on the surface, but they're using them as methods of control, as methods of enslavement. They'll give you technological miracles, or, you know, new medicines, and they end up using it as a method to control you further and shove you into your preferred social group or social system when they can easily rule over you through an international socialist system.
Exactly. And I think it's worth mentioning too that the big agenda, they are currently throwing so much against the wall just to see if it sticks. It's terrifying and it's pathetic at the same time. A perfect example is Eric Weinstein. Eric Weinstein is the managing director for Teal Capital, but they don't really announce that when he goes on the Joe Rogan podcast. He did talk about it pretty openly when he was on the Dave Rubin Report, and shortly after, of course, Peter Thiel appeared on the Rubin Report. But these are people who have Silicon Valley entrepreneurs walk into their office and propose just insane ideas for how to live forever. There are videos you can watch of Eric Weinstein talking to conferences on the subject of life extension, or they'll twist the language and they'll make it all about the transition into end of life or dying peacefully. All those types of conversations are backdoors for making people cyborgs, making people God. And it's pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic watching them try to become modern day philosophers, modern day Plato, Aristotle, or Socrates, waxing philosophically about the problems of Silicon Valley and how to live forever. So I have big questions. I have big questions about how they're going to transition into this next part.
Well, unfortunately, like you said, unfortunately, there are way too many people out there that look at Rogan or etc. as a modern day philosopher. They take everything he says and implement it into their own thought process. So, you know, when you got Rogan sitting up there promoting a universal language through telepathy, you know, years and years and years before Elon Musk comes out with the Neuralink, you know, it just goes to show you what agenda he's involved in and has been involved in. And that's what it takes, I think, is them sitting there years in advance promoting these ideas and they making them sound wonderful. And then ultimately those ideas become realities and people are already preconditioned to accept them, and they probably will.
Just a quick shout out to Misha Popov. I'm going to have him on regarding his research, and he's saying he can connect his research on their promotion of gay Jesus into all of this as well. But we'll have to go into that another time. That's kind of a segue. What I wanted to mention is that using psychedelic drugs or suggestogens for preparation for death is a scandal that I exposed in my article Spies in Academic Clothing, where Laura Huxley, under the direction of Sidney Cohen, gives Aldous Huxley his lethal dose of LSD and other drugs. And what I wrote there was Cohen was also consulted, and that's Sidney Cohen, who is one of the MKUltra doctors. When Laura Huxley injected Aldous with a lethal dose of LSD and other drugs the same day of John F. Kennedy's assassination. And by the way, on a side note there, Huxley and Osmond went to Harvard to hire Leary for MKUltra on the day that that JFK was elected. So, and then Huxley dies the day that JFK is assassinated. No irony there, but a topic that deserves a full investigation on its own. However, I'll say briefly that a more careful analysis of Laura's specious claims regarding the matter in her letter to Julian and Juliet Huxley of December 8, 1963, which is linked there in the article, suggests that Aldous was actually murdered by her, and or the entire story is a fabrication to further market LSD for MKUltra right up to the end. And this is for, you know, the preparation for death, you know, for aiding in death that you just mentioned, Jesse. And then quoting Laura, if the way Aldous died were known, and this is her PR, this is all of their propaganda. Keep that in mind while you're listening, folks. The way that Aldous died, if the way Aldous died were known, it might awaken people to the awareness that not only this, but many other facts described in Island are possible here and now. Aldous asking for moksha medicine while dying is a confirmation of his work. And as such is of importance not only to us, but for the world. It is true we will have some people saying that he was a drug addict all his life and that he ended as one, but it is history that Huxley stop ignorance before ignorance can stop Huxley's. And, you know, when we look at the MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, promoting this, when we look at them promoting, things like psilocybin mushrooms, and then I get into the Florentine Codex and the old texts regarding the Aztec mushroom use and preparing their sacrificial victims for human sacrifice, it starts making sense. And Rolf Singer had suggested, you know, in what, the 50s or 60s, that that's what the Aztecs were doing. And then Gordon Wasson attacked him in his book, Mushrooms, Russia, and History, for making that suggestion. And then when we go in there, we see clearly that there was two things going on. They were eating the mushrooms and then giving the victims the mushrooms and then eating the mushrooms themselves, killing the victims and then eating the victims. And so you have, you know, very highly likely active psilocybin in the bloodstream with the adrenochrome of these victims in their sacrifices, you know, as they're being sacrificed. And then you have these people going on their bloodthirsty rampages as they're, involved in these huge feasts. And it's said in the Florentine Codex that Montezuma had 8,000 people sacrificed at his coronation. And then they went about, you know, they cut the hearts out, they throw the heads down the stairs, and then they start eating the bodies and all of this stuff. So it's pretty disturbing when you start seeing it as a death cult involved in adrenochrome and all of this other stuff.
Definitely a death cult. Well, I think we do have to give points to Alex Jones, as disappointed as we are in backstabbing us like he did. He did get the point about human sacrifice across on the Joe Rogan podcast. And interestingly, Joe Rogan went along with it. I didn't see him making a fuss. I didn't see him promoting psychedelics. He let Alex get all those points out, which baffling to me. But on that issue of institutionalized human sacrifice, and then I'll throw in pedophilia, somebody asked me recently, Well, what does the popularity of Michael Jackson news and R. Kelly news have to be like? How is that a deception? And I mean, to me, it's obvious. It's like these are people who can easily be thrown under the bus. They can easily be served up in the public sphere, and it keeps the focus off the institutionalized aspect. It keeps the focus off how it is being normalized within certain world religions and within this movement. You're looking at these puppets. You're looking at just singers and performers, people doing tap dance routines. Yes, they did criminal acts, but we're never following the questions back to its source.
And somebody asks, have we heard of the Rogers curve of innovation? I have not. Either of you?
No. Well, probably, but it hasn't stuck. Like I couldn't recite it back to you.
Yeah.
If it has something to do with like how photography was invented or those types of things, it's like happy accident. It kind of sounds familiar, but I don't know.
So Matt, put you on the spot there. Got anything to add to that?
Oh, no, I've never heard of that. I don't know what that is.
Any of you have anything to say about this preparation for death? I see the people hit the like button in there, please, to hit the thumb up for us. But I see the correlation between the heavy promotion of psychedelic or suggestogens, a word that I created in 2014, which is starting to take hold. I see the promotion of suggestogens as a bit unnerving because we see these ties between these ancient death cults and how they were preparing people. So, when we look at the transhumanism agenda and wanting to turn us into cyborgs and whatnot, and sacrificing children and post-birth quote-unquote abortions, which is just flat-out murder and all of this stuff. And then you have the promotion of moral relativism with the drugs right there in the mix. It's hard not to see the correlation between, the Huxleys and the death cults and this whole agenda together.
Would you include the like cremation of Care, Bohemian Grove, mock sacrifice in that?
Yeah, I would, but that's, for the elites, and we don't know how much of that is really mock either. We only know what we see in the media.
Very
right?
true.
So
Very true.
There might be a much worse agenda there.
I just think of that phrase cremation of care. It's been popping up into my head more lately because care. Oh, that's so terrible to the elites, people who actually care. And of course, I think that the rise of apathy, the rise of anxiety in our culture, caused by social media, is definitely towards that agenda. It might not be of human influence. It might not be of human intelligence. It could be totally demonic in nature. But we're forming new tribes. We're forming virtual tribes, maybe putting on virtual headsets even and interacting with people in foreign lands. And
yeah,
how
like
much
you guys are both on the East Coast or whatever, and I've never met either of you face to face.
Yeah.
And it's like, we're coming up with these virtual families that have no strong bonds and ties. You can't walk next door to your aunt and uncles and cousins, and you can't, just hand your kids over to them when you need to go off on the farm or go to work or whatever. It's all cyber, and it's not, and while we can have real friendships from a distance in a way, you don't have that strong bond of being in the same place and same time.
And unfortunately, as fulfilling as these relationships can be, I find that it helps with the creation of a split self, nearly everybody that communicates with me intimately, they tell me about their frustrations, that we can talk about the subjects that we talk about, but when they go back to their family or when they're sitting at the stoplight or at the bus stop, they would never bring up the subjects that we talk about. Maybe a little bit more now, and like they feel emboldened to do so. But that's one of the core debates is how do we snap out of it? How do we become full uh, into our single person? How do we take away this idea of having a split self when we're on the internet to having just fulfilling normal lives where we can say what we feel is the truth at Thanksgiving. I do want to mention Owen Benjamin because so many people are following him, and there's the question whether he's part of this agenda. I've been really excited the past couple of days to see him take a harder stance, testing some of the harder questions philosophically with the people around him. So there is hope, I think, that people are digging deeper into the scale, the scope, the shape of the conspiracy. Maybe their lifestyle choices kept them from diving all the way in. It's perfectly understandable how a woman seeking a career for herself would never research how the Rockefellers really love women's lib. In the same way, it's understandable how somebody who's in the psychedelics doesn't want to dig too deep into Jan's research because they're conflicted about it.
Correct. I would agree with that. King Ravana is asking, do misphonia patients have relief with DMT? I want to be able to drink water or yawn around my friend when I am tired and dehydrated. But I don't know. I haven't looked into that specifically. I don't trust these so-called scientific studies being cranked out of MAPS and Johns Hopkins University and elsewhere. The agenda with that is to give the psychedelic drugs legitimacy, and they're very hard to fact check when when these studies say may do this, could do that, might do this over here. And, there seems to be some relief with patients with PTSD, but it really comes down to trying to live in logos or in truth as much as possible, and trying to get yourself away from the drugs as much as possible. I'm not sure, and I don't have misphonia, so I wouldn't know what that's like. But either of you have anything to say on that?
Well, I have a question. Just I think that's along the same lines of that for Matthew or yourself, Jan. Is when it comes to MAPS and the Esalen Institute, like what's the line of dialogue or rhetoric they use to excuse their influence? They're socially engineering society. What do they tell themselves when they show up to work? Like what is the actual, like, what's the little propaganda thing? What's their mission statement for how they're actually helping society? I don't get it. I just
Well,
don't get it.
it's published in Changing Images of Man, and probably the lower people at the Esalen Institute just go to work and think they're involved in some new age, cool, teaching meditation and massage and this kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah, but the social engineers are probably the ones further up. Like again, we have and a lot of these people are gone or retired now. But Michael Murphy, Dick Price, Aldous Huxley, Gregory Bateson, Terrence McKenna, Michael Aquino, whatever you call the guy. I think I don't know. Did I say Tim Leary? But so many of these people at Esalen, and let me just pull that up here.
I need to look into Aquino's connection to Esalen. I've had run-ins with him.
Just really quickly, Joseph Campbell would be another big one. Ram
Right.
Dass would be another big one. Robert Anton Wilson, James Fadiman, who created microdosing. I interviewed that guy years ago. B.F. Skinner would be another big one. So would Arnold Toynbee and some of these other people here. But we see the key players up above who were behind the creation and influence of Esalen, and here we see Deepak Chopra in there as well. So he's probably a higher level
Yeah,
character
sure.
over there. But, I would say most of the normal people there, just like I was duped in my 20s and early 30s getting into this stuff, and didn't know myself what it was all about. I would say a lot of those people don't. And of course, they're all encouraged to not check out Jan Arvin's work. Somebody who grew up at the Esalen Institute reached out to me recently and told me all of the druggings and horrors, and he was molested there and all kinds of stuff. And, so there's, a lot of bad stuff that they sweep under the rug at Esalen too. So, some people seem to know about it, and others seem to not want to talk about it and not have it discussed, and the Esalen Institute is really probably one of the key places that needs to be thoroughly flushed out. And I've focused on them for years, and, I know that I haven't even gotten the tip of the iceberg on what all they've promoted out of there.
Well, let me build on that. I completely agree with what Jan said there. But at the same time, they're bringing in these Soviet scientists, cosmonists, etc., that are mingling with our high-level Silicon Valley people, and they're trading ideas. In my video with Rogan, I get into some of this, where they're promoting life extension, just the typical agendas you see coming out of like Joe Rogan's podcast, for example. Originated at Esalen through typically Soviet scientists that came over and were influencing our people. So you see it used as that as well. And at the same time, they would bring Soviet scientists over, or Soviet engineers, and our engineers would give them literal secrets on how to redirect rivers and all kinds of different treasonous things. And then also, as
and just literally handed them the psychedelic drugs to take, KGB agents, they would hand them the drugs to take over to Russia and then drug their people with,
Exactly, to test on their own people, because that's what's going on. There's a lot of testing on the lower level people that are going there with the Tavistock psychiatrists that were there. But I lost my train of thought there. But so yeah, there's all kinds of applications that were going on at the Esalen Institute.
The idea that there's these ideals, or that they're pushing society and their way or the highway, I imagine that the Esalen Institute at some point was seen as sort of an underground movement. If you look at it in today's scope, they're not the minority. Clearly, they are not some underground entity of people who are victims. They have been pushing their ideas through Hollywood, through the arts. If you just look at Joseph Campbell alone, that narrative structure has been in every Hollywood movie that you've ever seen. Every movie that you've ever seen, minus some of these more abstract, art house films, have the Joseph Campbell hero's journey. And
absolutely, Star Wars obviously being the hugest one of all.
Speaking of Michael Aquino has a lot to do with the whole Jedi mind stuff. He actually answered on my YouTube page because I was cornering him, and he came back maybe 6 months later to smugly just gloat. He answered my question about whether it was him or George Lucas that came up with the Jedi mind bending thing anyways. But with Joseph Campbell, I find that his imagination and his teaching and his books that is single-handedly one of the biggest cultural shifts that we have, as far as every millennial now just assumes that every story should have these archetypes, it should have these narrative structures. And Jordan Peterson can then take Carl Jung's research, Joseph Campbell's.
A second.
just the idea that Joseph Campbell went to these countries and he did this anthropological research, and then Hollywood adapted the structure of Star Wars and this research, that every single society has these shamanist journeys, and that every story should have, you know, the belly of the beast, and this is the gatekeeper and the shadow. You know, Jung talked about these archetypes. Jordan Peterson has taken that cultural icon and he's now repackaging it to people who are seeking Jesus Christ. And when he goes out into the world promoting Christianity, some would argue that he's not, he puts Jesus Christ and other world religions on equal footing as the Lion King, or the character Jiminy Cricket from Pinocchio.
Right.
And these are the things that people need to look out for to find his agenda, is that when you really break it down, it doesn't make any damn sense.
And
Really
I had been emailing with that guy. Now I'm forgetting his name.
I thought you were going to say Peterson. I was like, really?
Oh no, good grief. I hope not.
Let's try to email him.
Yeah, so he's got a documentary film. What is it? Jordan Peterson Dismantled, I think is what it is.
Yep.
And I've exchanged some emails with him, and I really recommend people who are, you know, addicted to Jordan Peterson to watch, you know, or people who aren't addicted to Jordan Peterson, who are awake, to spread that video, Jordan Peterson Dismantled, anytime he comes up in a conversation, because it really drives home the point of the socialist UN agenda behind it all there, and that's, you know, that pushes Peterson and his whole, you know,
it's fairly succinct as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just waffling around.
It's only 30 or 40 minutes, so it's not too long, and it's very powerful, and it exposes all of these guys. You know, a couple of years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, God Sod emailed me and asked me what I thought of some video, and I replied to him, you know, and I wrote like a page reply, and it took me a while to finally get to it, and I didn't even realize who the guy was at the time, and I just thought he was some low-level podcaster not working directly with Jordan Peterson on the, you know, on the take with the UN apparently, but so I broke down this whole show. Maybe I should just read the email. It's kind of long. Maybe another time.
That'd be great.
Oh, all right. Well, if I can find it here, I'll.
Unless you're, you know, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah. Let me see if I can find it here. So just a second. But
that's one of the.
I got to search for it here in the system.
It's one of the unfortunate aspects of the society we live in now, is that you know, stopping the pedophiles or stopping the criminals, people are just giving away their privacy left and right, you know, and one to really think about is in our day-to-day viewing habits. It really is important to just step away from the tablet, step away from the computer, and think about your viewing habits. Think about just how much privacy is breached. People looking into QAnon, people looking into all of these weird rabbit holes. So much of the quote unquote evidence is just people throwing people under the bus or chewing them up in the gears of our own imaginations. It's kind of terrifying, and I don't know what to do about it.
I did find that email here, and I sent this to him May 8th, 2017. Finally got around to this. What these two dance around, and him and his guest, God Sod and his guest, is that the whole thing is an attack on family and is pure social engineering. These two appear to be running right down the Tavistock SRI CIA playbook with these agendas. Feminism was created by the CIA, Black Lives Matters, funded by Soros, multiculturalism, the same, etc., etc. All of this social justice, left-hand path crap signals the final collapse of society, as you full well know. You force everyone to cater to the few. You blow issues up that are really minor until you force them into everyone's face. You get everyone into this touchy-feely stuff, focused entirely on feel-good emotions and avoiding any facts whatsoever. This is all based on so many false premises, I don't know where to begin. For instance, Steinem's work with the CIA is right on their own website. Quote, I might quote Miss Gloria Steinem, one of those so assisted, who commented that the CIA wanted to do what we wanted to do, present a healthy, diverse view of the United States. I never felt I was being dictated to at all. And that's DCI William Colby quoting Gloria Steinem. But you have to ignore the foundations of social engineering and pretend that this stuff was organic rather than the engineering and eugenics at all. Feminism wasn't about women's rights. It was about destroying the backbone of the home and getting moms out of the house and into the workplace where they could be taxed. Obviously, the promotion of the LGBT QWERTY community is simple eugenics dressed in love and made to look like social justice while it's being heavily promoted, caused by low-fat, low-cholesterol, phytoestrogens in plastic, soy, etc., that are all Band-Aid issues. But again, it's an attack on family and is eugenics dressed in love and social justice. If you want to do an honest presentation, you should start with the agendas behind each of these. They're real targets: undermining culture, degrading morals and ethics, promoting the destruction of the family, etc. You obviously know this since you preface the show with ethics. My guess is that these communists don't have family and children, especially the guy on the left. I think that was Godsod. Socialism dictates to never grow up, to live off the state, and to try to force everyone to cater to your crap. It's teaching people to think with their emotions rather than facts. Total crap, IMO.
So, good question for Godsod. How did he get Jack Dorsey on his show? That's quite a get, I would say. Sam Harris, Godsod, Joe Rogan, and then everybody else just has to watch one of those broadcasters. I think that's a lot of that it leads to the next point, which is how incredibly deceptive Jordan Peterson's message, a lot of these people, and I feel like we're just in a funnel because of the nature of the deception. There are now all these people out there just promoting clean your room or take personal responsibility. If you don't like that this agenda exists, if you don't like that this deception exists, take responsive. They don't say take responsibility for the deception. They're not saying expose the deception. They're saying clean your room and become responsible and be the most respected person at your own father's funeral.
Did you say clean your room rather than your house? Because if you're cleaning your room, you're not grown up yet. You're still living under mommy and daddy's roof.
That's a great point. That's an excellent point. Jordan Peterson has one of the corners of his presentation is clean your room, which is basically telling people to just,
the millennial beta males that never move out of their parents' house, right? And they never have the family, and they're living in their mom and dad's basement into their 30s and 40s. And and I interviewed
right.
Oh shoot, now I'm forgetting his name. Last summer I interviewed this guy. Oh, good grief, now I'm forgetting his name, man. It was a great interview about the extended adolescence and what all of this has caused. And we were discussing in that interview this guy in his mid-30s in New York that had sued his parents because they finally gave him an eviction notice and told him to get out of the basement and quit the video games and go get a life, and he actually sued them. Thank goodness he lost, but he had been, living off them, doing nothing for decades. It's like, come on, you're in your mid-30s, get it together. How ridiculous.
It's the flip side. It's the flip side to being liberated. Leave home, move across the country, screw your extended family, go to college. I'm talking about myself. I mean, like when I was 18, I did all this stuff, and it's very sobering to realize that it was agenda driven. It is a question of how do we pick up the pieces of our own lives, and on a day-to-day operational level, how do we even move forward exposing the agenda without falling into another trap? Matthew, do you have any on what we've just been talking about? I've just been kind of steamrolling you here.
Oh no, it's all good. Yeah, no, not really. You guys have much more life experience than I do. So I'm still really young. I have a lot to learn and a lot to achieve in my life still. So your opinion on this situation is much more respected, I'm sure, than mine is.
Well, from a
I
youth standpoint, that's just as valuable because you can interject your point from,
yeah.
coming at this and learning it and, being 22 and being aware. And by the way, that interview was with Dr. Leonard Sachs on gender, parenting, and family. I recommend everybody check out this interview. It's extremely important. And, I don't agree with everything the guy said, especially on promoting, more vegan or vegetarian type diet when we've shown repeatedly that ketogenic diet is much more beneficial and healthy and whatnot. But the overall point there and just helping young people get it together, especially men. It's like, you know, far more women are entering universities and stuff now than men, and men are staying at home and unable to get jobs and whatnot. But I'm not saying that the education that you get at universities is of much value either, because it's so much social engineering and telling you what to think rather than how to think. And so that has to be looked at as well as is that whole issue. But there are certainly things to be gained there, like studying English and literature and logic and philosophy, but they're not going to break down the trivium method for you and this kind of stuff.
Well, and at the same time, you enter university and you get yourself in thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of dollars of debt. Then you're stuck with that debt. Then you got to pretty much take the first job that you get to start paying this debt off. Then you're automatically a slave to the system. So, I mean, that's pretty much how it works. I see it over and over again with people where they graduate, they end up not getting a job in what they want to get a job in. And then they sit there and pay their debt off and again, fill their life with distraction after distraction, So
Sports, right?
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
and you have to go through all of this social justice. Men are
Yeah.
bad crap, to get a degree anymore and whatnot. And it's like, these total nonsense classes that you have to waste your time with that are just SJW social engineering classes specifically, and it's entirely to propagandize kids.
By the time you come out of college, you're going to have a social circle too, and there'll be built-in expectations, things that are normalized. You want to be perceived as cool. You don't want to be perceived as a nerd.
Oh, I don't mind that. I like being a nerd.
Well, yeah, right. But I think that's part of it. Part of it is
Matt's the biggest nerd I know.
there's
Hey,
there's there's no fear. There's no fear of being too cool for school. I think that's one of the worst things that you can be in this culture. And within this deception, people who stand by and who are afraid to act because they're too cool for school. And I've definitely noticed that a lot of these podcast networks play on that. They need their talking points. How many times has Dave Rubin used the phrase, the left needs to have conversations? They're forming a funnel based on having the voice of reason. And even within that funnel, conservative Christian values are not necessarily frowned upon, but they're just outside of that bubble of that cool crowd that these podcast networks want to prop up and give a bigger platform. And it just keeps going. And Matthew, I think your age, for me, like I just think about people your age all the time, especially with your level of intelligence, because how frustrating would it be?
I think I mentioned that to you the other day, Matt.
like when people are 18 years old, 20 years old, 22 years old, they're just bouncing back and forth trying to find an in-group, trying to find an identity. And then in this culture, the internet comes along and it just bats everything away as you find it. And they're like, nope, this is agenda driven. Nope, that's agenda driven. That's agenda driven. I think I actually bumped into it with Jan when I mentioned that Matthew, I haven't told you this. David Seaman emailed me. and he said, I want to talk to you about Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. Like, what about the whole carnivore diet thing? I don't know what to do when David Seaman reaches out to me and tells me that he wants to help expose Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson. I'm at a complete stalemate. I need outsiders to tell me, should I proceed? Should I even email David Seaman back? I don't even know what to do with that. And I think that sparked a conversation with Jan.
Yeah.
uh, then he wanted to get into a debate about, vegans versus the carnivore diet or whatever. Like, I think Jordan Peterson's carnivore thing is suspicious.
Well,
But
I was a vegetarian and I landed in the ICU. And, the thing is when you realize how much of the brain is made out of cholesterol and it burns saturated fats and whatnot, and the reproductive system as well. And then you have Plato discussing in the Republic how to control the masses on a vegetarian diet. The vegetarian diet is a famine diet, and it's signaling the body that there isn't enough nutrition around. And so the body starts shutting off things like reproduction and then the brain to keep itself going and functioning. And so, and then you have like veganism is basically a grain and legume diet. Most grains have a lot of toxic lectins in them and phytic acid and these things. And then, and the same thing with beans as well, but they, contain anti-nutrients. And how I saved my life after 15 years in and out of the hospital and 5+ days in the ICU was switching to a ketogenic diet. And I was told I would never be off the meds. I would never have a normal life. I was supposed to be dead 3 years ago. So I'm on borrowed time technically by what the doctors said. They said I wouldn't live past 45. And I've been off the meds, I think, since 2010 or 2011. And, I thank Dr. Bill Davis, author of Wheat Belly, and some of these other guys. Davis really helped me a lot. And, just exposing this agenda. And even though I don't agree with a lot of the agendas that Dave Asprey has sold, I do agree with his dietary information. And I still put, 3 ounces of butter in my coffee every morning to start my day. And it's been, I attribute the butter and the high-fat diet to curing all of this stuff. And when we consider, like, the outer cell and the lipids of the body and everything are all made of saturated fats, why are they telling us to eat a low-fat, low-cholesterol diet? Mm-hmm. People used to know that if you ate grains, you'd end up sick or obese or having a heart attack and these sort of things. And they say, eat your healthy whole grains. Those are the worst of all. And, the Loma Linda University Medical Center, not far from me here, is in a vegetarian town. And it's one of the leading heart hospitals, if not the, because it's in a vegetarian town. It's a Seventh-day Adventist community. So, it goes to show, there is a connection there. And like when Bill Davis, when I had him on the show, we discussed how he had made his patient sign a contract. And at that time it was 4 years. And this was 2010. I interviewed him, and he made his patient sign a contract that they would not eat grains and wheat for 3 months before surgery. He hadn't done any surgeries except for one in 4 years. And the one that he had done was a minister who wouldn't quit the cakewalks. And so he was the only one out of all of his patients that had to have the surgery. And I just wanted to say thank you, Brian Payne. He says, hey, guys, thanks so much for all you do. They're really cool. Don't give two hoots what anyone thinks.
I'm trying to find the one outrageous claim that Jordan Peterson made, and then I think we should move on from dietary stuff.
Sure, we should probably go ahead. We should probably think about wrapping it up in the next 20 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, but he made an outlandish claim about how like he only ate like fruit or something for like 6 weeks straight. He's like, there is some agenda there somewhere in there, but I think especially Matthew's generation, they're looking for identity politics anywhere, and the dietary thing, it's very difficult to just take somebody's advice, especially without their own experience or without really having a catalyst for it, because all they see is the conflict back and forth. Vegan, no, all meat. It's like we're like,
Well, keto
we're gonna
isn't
form like
keto isn't
tribes
all
based
meat.
on
But
yeah.
I get that, and I went through it, and then once you get yourself off of the grains and out of all that, and like you said, we need to get away from this. But when I switched to a high-fat diet, and I was really leery because of all the propaganda you hear, meat, butter, eggs, so bad,
Right.
But when you switch to a diet that's, 50 to 70% fat, maybe 15, 20% meat, 20% veggies, 5% fruit, you eat it at night, my health completely changed around. And over the last 8-9 years since I've promoted the keto diet on my show and spoken out against veganism and vegetarianism, I've had hundreds, thousands of emails over the years from people who've turned their health around, and I haven't heard of anybody myself. Dave Asprey told me he had one person ever that didn't get better, but I've had thousands of people who reverse major health problems, and the thing is most people don't realize that wheat alone can cause over 40 different diseases, so if you're eating that stuff and you go to the doctor, he gives you a pill for this problem and that problem and that problem. He doesn't realize that the grains are causing 40 different problems.
Well, I'll have to dig into that one and probe around a little bit. I take your word for it. I take your life experience for sure. I was just thinking about where we could do the most work right now, like the things that are shaping up, or maybe the things that have happened in the last 6 months in the podcast world. Matthew, is anything that you want to highlight more than anything? On my plate, I have the philosophy gladiator arena fights between Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson. I think that's something we could talk about a little bit. Is there anything that you want to mention that maybe plays more into the Esalen Institute and Aldous Huxley?
Well, no, not necessarily. It's just, I think, just highlighting what the agenda is and how they
Right.
use these change agents, what willingly or unwillingly, through podcasts. And all it took was, corporations, Peter Thiel, whoever, to dump some money into
Mhm.
podcasting. And from there, you can run a whole operation and push a whole agenda and easily. And we see it happening. So I just think highlighting the agenda that's going on there is the big thing right now, and getting into some of the corporate connections and getting into things like the Esalen Institute and maps which run through it, and just basically laying it out for people so they can understand and recognize that their entertainment and what they're listening to when they're trying to relax is actually pushing an agenda that they're following ultimately.
Well, let's go through some of these personalities just back to back, and some viewers will be familiar with some of these characters. Some viewers might even be fans of these characters. Again, I say take this with a grain of salt, but please try to do the research, go back and look and see where we were predicting movements from month to month. And so many of them ended up exposing themselves, like Eric Weinstein. So we talked a little bit about the Weinstein brothers. They appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast, and their narrative was that we need to have more conversations. Society is breaking down. The left is becoming more radical. That really can't be argued. But the problem most people had with them was that they were trying to hijack something that was uniquely conservative, meaning, I think, family values.
Well said. You just hit the nail on the head.
They were, these subversive centrist leftist. Anyways, that keeps coming up. Second to that, obviously Joe Rogan. We could, and we will probably do multiple shows on Joe Rogan, but his very dangerous role within the larger deception is just to give these people a layup, to give them a platform boost, to give them exposure. And then, of course, if they fail miserably or have a gaffe, Joe serves to do damage control for them, which we see repeatedly now. We have many instances where Joe has done damage control for Jordan Peterson, the Weinstein brothers, for himself most recently when it comes to Jack Dorsey, and even Alex Jones, if it mutually benefits them. Dave Rubin was on the Young Turks, which is a very radical liberal left-leaning show. And even his co-workers admit that he was not a very bright individual. And they think that what happened is that the Koch brothers came along, put some money in his pocket, and then he decided one day that he was going to be conservative. It's an attractive message because he's a homosexual, openly homosexual man who up and decides in this climate that he's no longer a liberal. So many people are shifting over to his platform. And like we said, they have been putting people such as Peter Thiel, transhumanists, Ben Shapiro. After Joe Rogan had Tim Pool, I think Tim Pool a day later showed up on the Rubin Report. So those are propagandists. Joe Rogan, Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro. We don't really have to get into on this broadcast, but there is a very revealing Ben Shapiro, Joe Rogan interview where their talking points are pretty much out in the open. So I hope in the future we can cover that one. And then move into the podcast network of Aubrey Marcus and the On It Network. And that's just an octopus spreading its tentacles into Hollywood, into MMA. So that's athletics, artists, social influencers of all kinds. So we mentioned Brendan Schaub, Brian Callen, Theo Vaughn, Sam Tripoli, Eddie Bravo. We don't know the extent of the business deals and who's CIA and who isn't CIA. But like I said, this is a podcast network. So as soon as an idea goes out into that network, they start reverberating and repeating these messages. They start amplifying these messages. And there's probably some more that I can name. But then we'll probably get into the Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson thing. Have you followed that at all, Jan? Sam Harris?
No, not really at all. I think I didn't even enter him into the database until this week, until like yesterday.
Great. Okay, great.
But go ahead.
There's not much to it. But this is like the phone calls that you and I have had between each other. The only thing I really want to get across is that through Joe Rogan and their various YouTube channels, these men they've been hyping up these public appearances between the two philosophers, Sam Harris as the atheist and Jordan Peterson as the Christian.
And he's not even a Christian, really.
And there have been people who really follow Jordan Peterson like a WWF match, hoping that he wins the debates. So you can imagine on college campuses and as they continue
it's all staged.
It's all they're doing is they're just driving people towards the neo-shamanist Esalen Institute agenda.
Right. And then Jordan Peterson will say, take mushrooms or DMT if you want to experience God and get mind controlled.
Or they'll play the question if he thinks Jesus is God and he needs more time. And, I think most people who are skeptical of Peterson are keyed into that, at least, hopefully by now.
So Boomer says, new centrism is the most elitist and establishment ideology ever. It's like Peterson and Rogan are brain melded with the bankers' technocracy.
We have Jordan Peterson actually located at CFR. Like we can actually, I don't know why he would, not try to hide it. Dr. Oz, CFR. It's like, I don't know what people are thinking. I guess the one thing I'll throw in there
they're waiting for us to come out, with another viral video to expose it all. Matt.
I'll be working on it. There's no doubt about it. I'll be working on it.
Yeah, Matt should be the face on it because he's younger than us, and they look at a kid presenting and doing all this research, and they're mind blown. So, and he kind of sets a good example for young adults to dig in and learn how to research. And somebody did ask in the show or in the chat earlier if we would do a show on researching and stuff. And usually every new series I start, I do that. I think at the beginning of Unspun, like 3 years ago, we did a show on the Trivium. On the Logos Roundtable, we did a show on the Trivium. And way back in the beginning of when it was Gnostic Media, I did the series with Gene Odenning launching the Trivium. So, maybe we ought to think about doing a show of how we all research and, just so that people can understand the process. And yeah, I mean, it's tedious. It's not that exciting and fun. Sometimes it requires travel and digging through university archives. Sometimes it requires calling up librarians and spending $100 or $200 to mail you whatever they have on a certain person or whatever. But you can go through and do all of this stuff and pull this sort of thing together. So that's something that maybe we could all, do one day if you two are interested in anything like that.
We're just talking about process in general is exciting.
Right.
I'm very much a process person. I think people will mistake me and not realize how much I love processes. And so I like to experiment with format. I like to experiment with framing. So sometimes, because I'm dealing with broadcasters, the research is what you're watching. I mean, we now live in a culture that is very reflective, meaning the second an idea is out there, your competition can come along and they can snatch it up, or like we've seen with Joe Rogan. He puts his tail between his legs and he clutches to Alex Jones for strength. Matt, what did you think about Joe's talent booker relocating across the country within a week of all of this happening? Any suspicion there, or anything you want to speculate about?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure why, and I don't know if it was related to us. I'm not sure how much you put out there about him, but what DC to Phoenix, I believe,
Tucson.
Tucson, yeah.
So all I can really say from Joe Rogan's side is that the more I talked about the most people don't even realize this. Most people think, because they're just working superficially off of what they see. They see Joe Rogan talking to a biologist. They assume that Joe Rogan went through the trouble to email that biologist. That's not true. Joe Rogan is the front man. There are people behind Joe Rogan that are booking his show. In some cases, Joe might not even know why, but he's told to be fair in interviewing them or whatnot. So Matthew Staggs, who booked all of Joe's guests, since the Alex Jones thing and since there's so much heat coming down on Joe Rogan, he is relocated from Washington, D.C. to Tucson, Arizona. And the only thing I saw on Joe Rogan's side is that he started incorporating Matthew's name in the show, calling him his friend. And it's this typical strategy that these comedians will do as just kind of reverse psychology. Like they're taking ownership of it and you can't shake them. You can't get inside their head. Everything's fine on the surface. But meanwhile, that's how they panic. That's how they, that's their like defense mechanism, is if they're on the stage with the microphone, they just try to engage with the audience to show that they have no fear, that they're in control of the situation. And clearly right now, the shape of the internet, and in particular on YouTube, what I see is everyone versus Joe Rogan. And I'm very excited about that.
What do you think of Vox Day? People keep bringing him up in the chat.
I think he's got I think he's got a good heart, but I don't think that I don't think he's a very good role model, because he's going to lead people into intellectual pride and philosophy, and he has all this terminology that's not biblical at all. He was a pickup artist, and so he talks so much
good
about
grief.
alpha males and beta males. And the real term that he should be using is Ahab, Jezebel, and Ahab. So I just find it ironic that he talks so much about gamma males, and he couldn't care less about Jezebel and Ahab. He may, in fact, be an Ahab, just overcompensating endlessly. But I've made attacks, not necessarily attack or hit pieces on him, but just testing him. And I don't consider him an enemy by any means, but I think that he needs a little help finding the light. I think he needs a little help. He actually calls himself like Dark Lord Supreme. His stream is called the Dark Stream. And usually when you find
Red
that,
flags.
yeah, I mean, you'll find anytime there's that light and dark dichotomy, you'll find alchemy, you'll find shamanism. He's worked on video games like Conan Exiles, and I don't want to use guilt by association, but there's a lot of satanic stuff in those video games. There's a lot of satanic stuff when you're writing medieval fantasy novels. So I think we're going to find out more about him, but especially when you research his father, when you research that he's sort of been insulated in a bubble his whole life. He broadcasts from Italy telling Americans about nationalism. I don't know. I don't know what to do with that guy.
Matt?
I pretty much agree. I don't know much about Vox Day. I know he's covered the intellectual dark web a little bit. I know he goes on Alex Jones, but I don't watch his stream. I haven't researched him at all, so I don't really have an opinion on that.
But on that note, he has been incredibly helpful for exposing Jordan Peterson. Milo Yiannopoulos, Vox Day, Owen Benjamin. It's like we need them to help expose the intellectual dark web. I would like to think of them as allies, but they seem so distracted in whatever their next commercial pursuit is. I don't think I'll be collaborating with Vox Day anytime soon. But independently, if we're all just exposing Jordan Peterson, then great.
Somebody's asking what I think about Sarion and Whitehead. I have no opinion on Whitehead. I interviewed Sarion years ago. I don't know what to think.
Well,
go ahead.
Launching off of that, Sargon of Akkad is a major player, and we can't make any real allegation at the moment, but there appears to be a dialectic between Joe Rogan and Sargon of Akkad. Sargon went on to Joe Rogan. Joe gave him a tongue lashing. Now, when Jack Dorsey goes on the Joe Rogan, Sargon will give them a tongue lashing. If you believe Sargon of Akkad at face value, within 1 week, he helped to bring Patreon to its knees, and he helped to bring Twitter to its knees. Is that legitimately happening, or is there something corporate happening behind the scenes? I lean towards the latter. I think he should be researched. Don't you think, Matt? We need to do a deep dive into Sargon of Akkad.
Yeah, probably. Good. I know he's someone else who has a lot of influence as well, and I agree with you. I agree with you that there's probably some corporate agenda going on there.
He might not get millions of views, but he'll get 200,000 views. Again, it's what I said, that the people who think of themselves as intellectual influencers, they're networked together. And so Tim Pool is becoming very relevant. Sargon is becoming relevant. And they serve the purpose of like the everyday man. Like Sargon is you. Sargon is me. that he's speaking for us.
I've never even watched the guy's show, to be honest. I'm too busy doing my own shows and thinking about my own stuff to worry about everybody else.
You have to be networked into things like the kill stream, and you have to just know about overall YouTube culture, which is very exhausting. It's extremely exhausting.
Indeed. So, you guys have anything else to add? We're right at the hour and a half point. I think that here's a good place to wrap it up.
I think we listed all the main characters. We'll probably think of a few afterwards, but it's a good introduction into the intellectual dark web. The intellectual dark web was created. It was created by the New York Times and Eric Weinstein. There's an article that you can track down and find. I encourage you to seek that out. And like all false flags, like all fake conflicts, the intellectual dark web is just another deception put together by some Fabian socialists. So thank you so much, Jan, and thank you, Matt, for letting me just yap.
Well, yeah, thanks for having me on too, Jan. Again, I want to plug Jesse's playlist on it. He does a great job of describing it and elaborating on it. So I think it's a good thing that he talked a lot today. And, in the future, I am going to be doing videos and sort of presentations like I did on Rogan maps and stuff on the intellectual dark web, because it is an important deception that everybody is seemingly being funneled into right now via this podcast network. So, hopefully I will be putting some of that content out, in the near future.
Let me say this real quick too. And it's my channel is, the chat is so amazing. People like Matthew North are in there. The smartest people get together in the chat and report back to each other. So when you go to my uploads and you're clicking through from month to month, just skim through and you're going to see all the substantial evidence or the predictions as we're watching these characters and coming to these conclusions, testing and trying and poking and prying. Check it out for sure. Just to see, the hit or miss rate. Just scam through, and try to see, like last November, what were we talking about? And what does the world look like now in light of Joe Rogan and Alex having this podcast?
All right, and thanks for the super chats and all of the comments in the audience today. That's a wrap. I'll be back on in an hour and a half, same Bat channel with Lloyd DeYoung to do our part 6 on Islam. You won't want to miss that, and so hopefully both of you will be in the chat on that. We got a lot of good material to cover. Matt, you definitely, per our conversation earlier today, you don't want to miss that one. And it's going to be deep and hard-hitting, so we'll see you all in an hour and a half. And thanks, both of you, for joining today. And
thank you, sir.
Talk to you then.
Thanks, John.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Talk to you later. Bye.